Great. We're cooking with gas. Thanks, Sarah. And wow, what beautiful art. I'd love to have that in my living room on the wall. It was just wonderful. Well, Sarah was talking about making color hillshades by hand. I'm going to be talking about a completely digital process today. It's going to be about the Equal Earth physical map. Now, those of you who were at NACIS last year, you'll remember that along with Bernie, Yenny, and Boyan Shavrich, we introduced a new world map projection. Can you hear me now? The Equal Earth, and to sort of kickstart this new world map projection, what I did is I created a political map of the world in that projection and released it into the public domain. And I'm going to be talking about a companion piece to the political map. Here you see it, kind of a minimalistic design. It shows political entities, and I thought it worked out, fairly well. But I'm really a terrain guy, and all of these country boundaries and country labels, they have a nasty habit of following, mountain ridge crests and rivers, obscuring the natural world below. So, this physical map that I planned to make kind of solves that problem, and I'll show you what happens here. All of a sudden you could see, many more rivers. You could see the mountains popping up, and you could see, natural colors showing world environments. You will notice that on this physical map there are a smattering of cities and towns. That's the only sort of human imprint on this map, and it's just there for cultural reference in case you don't really know where you are. And let's just go for a quick tour around the world. Here we are in the North Atlantic. You'll notice that there is ocean bottom shown very, very lightly. I wanted the map to really stress the terrestrial environment and not the ocean bottom. So it's there, it's light. You'll notice that the ocean bottom labels are screened back. I want them to look like they're actually submerged on the bottom of the ocean. Moving along, here's India and the Himalaya. The Himalaya looks suitably high on the map. And here's the map in its entirety. It's clean, minimalistic, and in the natural Earth projection, which I highly approve of. So what I'm going to do this morning is talk about some of the components that went into making this map, and I'm going to start off with the most important component of any physical map: shaded relief. You could have guessed this one, right? Okay, the political map uses this shaded relief of the world that I hand drew. Unlike Sarah, who's using Prisma pencils and wax, I drew this in Photoshop using a Wacom tablet and stylus. I think it's very generalized. It works out fairly well for some maps. It worked well for the political map because I screened it way back. It was very light. It was in the background. But for the physical map, it just did not have enough detail and oomph to it. I guess that might be the technical term. So I thought I needed to do this completely over. So the first step I did is I went and got a SRTM relief of the world, 1 kilometer resolution, and created a shade relief. And look at it, it's quite detailed, too detailed. It looks like grainy sandpaper, and obviously this would really not work at all. Now, one of the last problems I see in digital shaded relief production is making small-scale shaded relief. With most software, if you're making a shaded relief that's at large and medium scales, the default settings work pretty darn good. But at small scales, you end up with reliefs like this with too much detail. If you downsample them, they get very kind of mushy looking and don't really look very distinctive. And the first step I took in processing this relief is I used a software package called Pyramid Shader, developed by Bernie Yenny, Jim Aynard, and Charles Preppernow. It's a free software. I brought the SRTM DEM into it, and I used the equalizer filter, and I played around with the sliders that you see in the lower right. With this filter, what you could do is filter out the smaller terrain features. So almost instantaneously, all that little noise, it leaves the shaded relief, and I thought this was a step in the right direction. You'll also notice that the Alps are really just popping up, aren't they? I think I had about 25x vertical exaggeration that I used on the shaded relief here. So after applying the pyramid shader filter this is what I ended up with. And I thought, this was starting to get there, but I wasn't completely happy with the results. Again, it looked a little bit mushy, indistinct. It did not have that crispness that I wanted. And I was puzzling, how would I fix this? And, one way to do this would be to, get my Wacom tablet out and redraw the world, which would take me a month. And I didn't really want to do that. And it was over the Christmas break last year, visiting family, and kind of bored, that an idea came to me. I was sitting in my sister's living room, and I took a picture of my niece's cat. That's Louie, by the way. And I was playing around with the Prisma app on my phone. And you guys have probably seen the Prisma app. You can take a photograph, and what it does is it applies artificial intelligence, deep knowledge, neural networking, all these buzzwords that I don't really fully understand. But what you can do is you could transfer a artistic style from, say, a painter to a photograph, and it does some really wonderful things. I mean, Louis never looked so good before. And here's another example. There's literally hundreds of filters that you can apply. And I got to thinking, what would happen if I took that pyramid shader relief that I had and filtered it with Prisma? So, again, I was bored, so that's what I did. So I started going through all these artist styles in Prisma, trying one after another. Got some really interesting results. Nothing that would be appropriate for a map. They were very artsy. And then I stumbled on this one right here. Thota Vaikuntham. Mamatha coached me on the pronunciation there. And this fellow is an artist from South Central India. He specializes in painting rural folk in their traditional garb using these very bright colors that are evocative of India. And that's the filter I applied to this Prisma relief. So here was the original relief, and this is after the Prisma filtering. And wow, you need sunglasses. It's kind of bright, isn't it? But look what happens when you take that relief and just convert it to grayscale in Photoshop. Ooh, it gets a little more stylized, a little calmer looking. Let's go back to the pyramid shader relief before, and we'll go back to the Prisma filtered relief. The differences are subtle, but I think it just looks cleaner, crisper, and dare I say, it almost has a Imhoffian look to it. No, I say Imhoffian. I'm referring to Edward Imhoff, the late great Swiss terrain shader. And if I had drawn this by hand, I think I would have been proud to have done it manually. Now there was a kind of a side benefit to this relief is after all of this filtering, when I brought the natural earth vector data in, you see coastlines, rivers, and there's some little black dots that are very faint on there that show the mountain peaks. Everything matched up, which just kind of amazed me. I thought I was going to have to go in there and do a lot of manual touch-ups to this. Not at all. The registration was just about perfect on this. Now, creating this Prisma shade relief of the world, I have to admit, was a pain in the neck. I was using an iPhone, and this is a phone app, okay? And I'm mapping, creating a shade relief for the entire world. What I had to do was break this pyramid shader relief into 24 overlapping pieces very carefully, use AirDrop to go from my laptop to my phone, process it, use AirDrop to come back. Then I had all these numbered pieces, and I had to carefully reassemble them in Photoshop and use Geographic Imager to georeference them, and then I ended up with a shade relief of the world. And I'm happy to say that this Prisma shade relief of the world is now available on the naturalearthdata.com website, a NACIS-sponsored website, so if you go there, you'll find it this morning. It's been up for a couple days, and already about 50 people have downloaded it. So it's getting discovered already. And I have one last thing to say about the Prisma shade relief. We're looking at Southwest Asia here. I used another processing technique with Natural Scene Designer Pro. You'll notice that the terrain largely trends from southeast to northwest right into the standard illumination source on shade relief. And when that happens, mountain ranges tend to disappear. So what I did in Natural Scene Designer Pro, much like Sarah does, bending light, is I altered the light source for the Caucasus Mountains and the Kopak Dog down in Turkmenistan, a place we're going to be hearing about more in the conference. And by locally adjusting the light source, those ranges are more distinct. And what's interesting is when you look at the whole relief, you don't really notice so much that I've played God and changed the light source at all. So it just helps with the legibility and readability of the relief. So that's the Prisma shade relief. I'll finish up now with another sequence about the base map, and I'll go quickly here. I was pondering which colors I wanted to use. I looked at cross-blended hypsometric tints. Nah, didn't like those colors. Looked at Natural Earth 1, too kind of fractured, especially up in Europe where you see forest and fields. It's kind of visually messy. I settled on Natural Earth 2, which was a little bit smoother. So that was going to be my color base. Then I got the Natural Earth ocean bottom data, and if you'll recall, I wanted to really de-emphasize bathymetry, so I really lightened that and pushed it way back into the background. Doing that, I ran into a figure ground problem, especially in North Africa, where the ocean and the desert areas are about the same value. So I added a little bit of dark vignette along the coastline that helps snap that out. And also, in the water, I added a little bit of light vignette. So now you can see figure ground, land, and water a lot easier. Then I added the grayscale Prisma shaded relief to it. This is multiplied at 50% opacity. And that worked out pretty well, but if you'll recall, that grayscale shaded relief had about 10 or 15% gray in the lowlands, and that gray polluted the nice vivid colors of the Natural Earth 2 data. So what I did in Photoshop next is I did a curves adjustment and removed all the gray shading in the lowlands. You can see the colors a little more vividly now, but the problem is the mountains don't look as three-dimensional as I would have liked. So I took that gray shading, put it on another layer, inverted it, and used it as a mask to apply lightning. So now the mountains have an illuminations channel, and they almost have a tactile appearance to them. They're popping up off the page. And the benefit is, because illumination is making them pop, the whole shaded relief and background art is pretty light. And that's important because in the next step, I'm going to add coastlines, rivers, and a couple labels. So this base had to be pretty light to accommodate all of this vector stuff. I mean, it's a map. You have to put that stuff on there, unfortunately. So that's the final map, and I have 2 minutes left, and this is going to work out just fine. You could download the map on the equal-earth.com website. There's a link for it. You could get a layered Adobe Illustrator file with map publisher georeferencing. There's the shaded relief files. There's the grayscale shaded relief in the Natural Earth projection, and also that color shaded relief that I showed you just a little while ago. Those are available for download. Use them as you like. There's also a big JPEG of the map if you just want to do easy printing and print it out on a plotter. And I'm just going to finish up very quickly here. You'll recall when I introduced the political map, I called for translators, and I'm happy to say that that hopefully by early 2020 there will be 11 more languages available, not including English. The ones that with the check marks have already been translated. They're available on the website for download. A couple people in the room here, Dennis and Hans, are engaged in the translating work. Most of the people that helped out are just people who contacted me through Twitter or the website, just through cyberspace. These are all the translators. Big shout out to them. It's a big job translating more than 2,600 labels. It's not something to be undertaken lightly. If any of you have a favorite language and you didn't see yours listed up there, please give me a ring. We could work something out. I'd love to have your help. So with that, thank you very much for your attention.